think in your mind for just a minute, if you wanted to think, is there a woman who inspired you in your own personal life? Who is that woman? Okay? Let's just go around the room and say who it was.
My mother, my grandmother.
Oh, first boss.
Okay.
My grandmother. My teacher and my mother.
My aunt and my mom.
My mother and Ursula Franklin.
Okay. Ursula's a wonderful woman. Don't know your mom, but she's probably great too.
My mom as well. My grandmother. My grandparents as well. My grandmother.
Okay.
Medical doctor. A teacher. My aunt. A female professor.
Okay.
My sister. Oh, one businesswoman.
Okay.
My mother and Agnes and Dale. My mother and my sister. My mother. My mother and my teachers.
Okay.
The wife of my pastor.
Okay. Oh.
Nothing else got it. My mom.
Okay. Okay. Madeleine Albright? Yeah, okay.
It's my grandmother and Maud Barlow.
Okay. Sorry, we got this row, right?
I have a long list.
Okay. All right. How about you who are hiding back there?
My mother and one of my sorority sisters. My mother and Oprah Winfrey.
Okay, that's an interesting one. Yeah. Yeah. How about you? Okay. You know, one of the things that that I do is before I became a university administrator was I was a full-time professor, and one of the things that I taught was French. And one of the jobs of a French professor is to make sure everybody can speak French. So I used to go to class a little bit early and just talk with the students. And so you have to have subjects that you can talk with them about, and usually it has to be pretty easy, because especially when they're starting to learn French, they can answer you. So, like I would do a question, who inspired you? And then they'd get it, and they could all say somebody inspired me, and they could practice saying that all around the room. And every time I asked that question, all of the young women almost always said to me that it was somebody that they knew personally. Did you meet Madeleine Albright? No? Okay, well, you're about one of the few exceptions. And I don't know, did you meet Oprah?
Not yet.
Okay. Okay, most everybody will say it's a, okay. It's somebody that they met or knew personally. And I kept thinking about that and ruminating on it. Why is it that the people that inspire us to do something are the people that we actually know? Why aren't there women role models out there that we're saying that we want to be like Mother Teresa, or we want to be like Hillary Clinton? Why are there not women that immediately come to our minds that we say that we want to be like? And first thought was, well, there are not too many of them. Okay, there are not a lot of women in that category. I mean, think of it. Can you think of? We've got Mother Teresa, Hillary Clinton. Who else? Shout something out. Okay, Madonna. And I heard somebody say that. No. Who else? You've got Madeleine Albright. You've got Maud Barlow. You've got Ursula Franklin. Think of it. Kim Campbell. Good. Michelle Obama. Okay.
Mama Africa.
Okay. And I can get it.
Agnes McPhail.
Okay, Miss McPhail?
She was the first female MP in Canada.
Okay, excellent. But we don't have a list like of hundreds of names, so they're not like bubbling out here and, you know, with trouble writing them all down. And so then you think to yourself, well, why aren't there more women? And why don't they come immediately to mind? And, you know, the first answer that one might think is, well, there were no women, right? And then I go back to my own literary studies, and I studied literature. And I did the 17th and 18th century, and then I did the 19th and 20th century. And I said, when I was in graduate school, I said to the faculty members, why aren't there more women writers? Where are the women writers? I'd like to study some women writers. And they said to me, there aren't any women writers. And I said, oh. And they said, no, women didn't write. And the few women that did write wrote with a pseudonym, and so they took a man's name, and so we don't know that they existed. And the others weren't any good, so they got kind of left by the roadside. So, you know, go read those male classic authors. So I did it. I didn't ever think of questioning it one moment. And then, as I was doing my own research, I started discovering more and more wonderful women writers who weren't on any curriculums that were given out. And I thought, well, why weren't we told about them? Why didn't we know? Well, I would never have told anybody else about them if I had just accepted. And my initial reaction was just to accept what I was told. So I accepted it, and probably other people before me did too. So maybe there are more women that are wonderful. Maybe there are more women that we should know about. They're out there, and we just don't know about them. Then there's the other issue. And the other issue is maybe there are really terrific women out there that are even better than we know, but we're unkind to them, and we cut them down, either ourselves or other women. Think about it. Hillary Clinton. How many people talk about that blue pantsuit that she had and make fun of her? Because that's what she wore when she first went to the House and Senate. And she got knocked down about it, and people criticize her about it, and they still do. Is that really fair? Do we criticize everybody for what they wore on the first day at work? Maybe what they wore at the first day of work doesn't matter, but we find a way to criticize people. And I myself even know this, because when I became a university president, I thought, wow, this is wonderful. I have at least one constituent group, the women. You know, the men have their men's network, and I'm going to have all the women who are going to support me. And so that I know that when something goes wrong or I need help, I'm going to go to my women colleagues and students, and I'm going to say, help me, and they will all get together and they will help me. I was very naive, because I didn't realize that when I went to the women faculty, 1/3 of the women were sitting there in the room saying to themselves, why does she get that job? I could do it better than she is. Look at that. 1/3 of them were really, really stressed out with their entire lives. They had so much to do that they couldn't help anybody. They were trying to help themselves, and they just had to get on with their lives. And then the rest of them were all sitting there saying, why did she wear that stupid brown pantsuit today? It really doesn't look good on her. So, you know, I wasn't getting the total support of women. And so maybe one of the reasons that we don't have women that are known as being wonderful is we're not recognizing them, and we're not doing what we have to do to vote for them. And I'll give you a really interesting example. I was last year in Virginia, and a woman came to see me, and she had done incredible volunteer work. She was an 87-year-old African-American woman who had devoted her life to helping people in a very poor community learn how to read. And she had started her own foundation called Mama, I Want to Read. And she had, from the age of like 30 till the age of 87, every single day gone after school and worked with these young people. And she had people from the university and everybody helping her, but she did this every single day of her entire life. And she was nominated for this prize as a volunteer. And it was one of these things where you have to go on the internet and vote for the person, and the person who gets the most votes wins. Okay, so she came and told me, and I said, oh, that is so great, I want you to win the prize. I voted, and then I thought to myself, I've got to get other people to vote. So I sent that out to the Women's Caucus, I sent it out to the school teachers in the city, I sent it out to everybody that I could think of. And she got 10 votes. They didn't take the time to vote. A couple of them, I said, did you vote? And they said, oh, we were too busy. Some of them said, well, you know, she was really great, but there are other people that do great things. Well, sure there are, but let's recognize the people that we know that have a chance. If they get ahead, other women will get ahead, and we have to do that. And that's why I think what you're doing here is just so great. It will encourage other women to move ahead. I started out as a math major, and I could have died and they never would have known that I wasn't coming to class. I had this French class, and the French professor was so nice, and he said to me, you know, you should major in French. We can send you to Paris, it'll be really a lot of fun and everything. I said, okay, I'll major in French. Math department never even knew I changed my major. You can make that difference. When there's another woman that enrolls, reach out and say to her, this is great, I'm so glad you're in my class. Can I help you? Do that, and you will make them feel good about being here, and you'll actually feel pretty good yourself. It doesn't hurt at all. So thinking about women in science and women who inspire one, I have to tell you that I always liked Marie Curie. Do you remember Madame Curie? Yes? Didn't you always kind of think she was wonderful? No? A little bit? Well, you know, I think she's absolutely wonderful because, first of all, she did this incredible work in science. And 2 years after they founded the Nobel Prize, she won the first, the Nobel Prize had been in existence only 2 years, and she won the Nobel Prize. And 5 years later, she won another Nobel Prize. And there are, I think, only 2 people in the whole world that ever won 2 Nobel Prizes. That is really extraordinary. No other women did it. And so it's quite an interesting story. So I looked up a few things about her, and I thought, let's look at it. The Nobel Prize was founded in 1901. She won the Nobel Prize in physics in 1903, and then in chemistry in 1911. So she won it in 2 different subjects. In 1903, she won it because of her doctoral dissertation. And her doctoral dissertation was on the uses of radioactive elements. And just before she won the Nobel Prize, she got married, and she and her husband won it together. Interesting. After they won the Nobel Prize, they got an invitation that her husband joined the Academy of Science. She didn't get an invitation in Paris. Her husband refused to join the Academy of Science, and because she wasn't a member. But she did really incredible works on the radioactive elements. She worked in a shed in Paris. It was -5 or -6 degrees centigrade inside the shed during the winter. There was no heat. There was hardly any light. The humidity was so bad that her electrometer didn't work half the time. She went through incredible obstacles and hardships. And she actually ended up giving her life to science because she got wounded by the radiation. Now, one might say that was pretty stupid, but it wasn't, because one of her papers was that this radiation that she had discovered could be used to cure lupus and other forms of cancer. And she thought it was a very healthy thing that was curing cancer. Well, it can be used to cure cancer. Just a little bit too much of it can do the other thing. So she was having quantities of uranium brought from Poland into Paris, and she discovered thorium. She named the word radioactive as a word that she invented. And she invented 2 new elements, radium and polonium. So she did a really, to invent an element, to discover an element, in my mind, is like Columbus discovering America. It's a big deal. And she did all of those things. And not only that, she had 2 daughters, and her daughter, Adele, won the Nobel Prize after her mother. So, think about it. When we all think of all the things that we want to do, have a career, have a family, move ahead, she did it all. She had that career at a time when it was really hard. She worked really hard under terrible conditions, and yet she managed to have 2 daughters and inspire her daughter to actually continue work and end up getting a Nobel Prize as well. That's a pretty good story, isn't it? I think it's pretty inspiring. And I never heard it told that way. Nobody said to me what a wonderful woman she was. She encouraged her daughter to study and become a Nobel Prize winner. Nobody has ever said that to me. And I never read it in a biography of Marie Curie when I was reading biographies of Marie Curie. So I think that's really exciting. But then when I was thinking about it, I thought to myself, well, how many women won Nobel Prizes? And I found this book, Women Who Won the Nobel Prize from 1901 to 1991. So between 1901 and 1991, there were 400 Nobel Prizes given out, and 24 of them were given to women. Well, that's pretty good, considering the fact that they're starting in 1901, in those early dates, there were a lot of women couldn't go to school. They couldn't do secondary school. They couldn't do university. And in 1901, you couldn't go to university in Canada if you were a woman. At Victoria University, which was the first university to accept women in Canada, you had to sit. They had the lecture in a room like this, and then they had the door open, and the women could sit out there in the hall and listen to the lecture because they didn't want the men to get distracted. So this just shows that it wasn't that long ago that women were completely excluded. So if they were completely excluded, one can kind of understand the reason why there weren't as many women winning Nobel Prizes, right? But then let's go right up to today. Do you know if there were any women that won a Nobel Prize this year? Last year, the year before, do you know any of them? But isn't it interesting? I've read in the newspaper about men who won Nobel Prizes in the last few years, but I didn't read anything about the women. Yeah, that's 7 years ago. Yeah. So let's just look at this. 2008, Françoise Barre-Sinoussi. She won the Nobel Prize in Medicine. She's the director of the regulation of the retroviral infections unit at the Institut Pasteur in Paris. She's the one that identified the AIDS virus and has spent her life working both on that virus and on education for the virus. Isn't it interesting? I never saw that in the paper. I never saw an article about it. Shouldn't we all celebrate that? I mean, I actually, when I read that, I thought to myself, what I want to do? I'm going to get a little note card, and I'm going to send her a note and say, I'm so proud of you as a woman for winning that Nobel Prize. And I bet if 1 or 2 of you did it, it might make her feel really good. Because every now and then something that just comes gratuitously out from left field is a nice thing. Okay, she might even answer you. Okay, then in 2007, there was Doris Lessing, the novelist, and she won the prize for literature. Reading Doris Lessing's life, you really have an interesting story of, she was born to British parents in Kermanshah, which was Iran. Her parents left and went to Africa. She grew up in Africa, in South Africa. She started writing about the equality of the races, and she was asked to leave South Africa and told never she could come back. She went to England, and she continued writing. She went to Rhodesia to lecture. They told her she could never come back there again. She's lost her country. People have not let her back because she talked about equality of races mostly. Very interesting character. And then we get Wangari Maathai, who won in 2000, you have to go, that was 2008, 2007, nobody 2006, nobody 2005, 2004, we get Maathai, who won the Nobel Prize in Peace. And she was born in Kenya, and she was the first woman in Africa to get a doctoral degree. And she didn't get the Nobel Prize because she got her PhD. She got her Nobel Prize because she started the Green Belt movement. And she devoted her whole life to the Green Belt movement, greening of Africa, and did wonderful things. And that same year, we had Elfriede Jelinek, who won the prize in literature. She was born in Styria, and she was a scientist, and she began writing poetry. And she wrote poetry about, and she writes between prose and poetry, but what she writes is also about freedom and about governments that don't allow women to be free. Interesting. So we get then, same year, 2004 was a big winner for women. We got Linda Buck, and she won for medicine, and she's the one that did the genetics of smell. She found out that in our noses, there's every single cell, every scent is related to a single cell, and every cell can only smell one scent. And she actually figured out how it was all genetically coded, the sense of smell. And then we go back to 2003, and you get El Badi, who won the Peace Prize, which you mentioned. These are wonderful women, and they're women that we should celebrate. But still, in 2008 and 2009, there are very few women that are being recognized. And I really think that we have to work on this. There are several ways that we can work on it. I talked to several Nobel Prize winners, and I'm going to confess that I got this book about women winning Nobel Prizes when I was in Toronto. I got an invitation. The University of Toronto had a Nobel Prize evening, and they invited 10 Nobel Prize winners to come, and they had a black tie dinner, and we were all to meet the Nobel Prize winners, and they were using it to get money from donors for the university. And I thought this was great, an evening with all these Nobel Prize winners. And I walked in, and 10 men in black tuxedos walked out. And it was when I saw all those men that I said, my goodness, there are no women? Were there no women Nobel Prize winners? And I sat there half distracted while they were talking, trying to think to myself, well, who were the women that won Nobel Prizes, and are they still alive? And why aren't any of them invited? And wouldn't it be great if I could go somewhere to another university in Canada, maybe even Carleton, and maybe we could have an event where we invite all the women Nobel Prize winners alive to come and do something really exciting? Because that would be quite a statement, wouldn't it? To show that the women did something exciting, and maybe that women at Carleton thought it was a great idea. So if you think it's a great idea, we can work on that as time goes on. I think it would be an exciting thing to do, and it would be exciting to do it with faculty and students together. So that's the reason that I bought the book, and that's the reason that I was trying to think of Nobel Prize winners that were exciting and inspiring. But I also think that we all have to know that you have to inspire yourselves, and don't ever any day be depressed. You know, you can be depressed, men too. The sun isn't shining every morning, and the essays aren't going so well, and there's an exam that you think you could have done better on. Your car doesn't start. Your apartment is cold. Dinner was lousy. There are all sorts of reasons that one can get depressed, good reasons and bad reasons. But you must not let yourself feel depressed. You must find inside yourself and say, I'm a strong person, and I am not going to let anything negative get me down. I'm going to succeed, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it for myself, and I'm going to do it for other women. And if you do, it will happen, and you will succeed. And so I think sometimes you also have to turn games around a little bit and make them your game to win. I know you were talking about negotiating your salaries for your jobs, and I'm a really bad person at doing that. I will tell you that's, I will negotiate anything for the university, but not for myself, and that may be a flaw that I have because I'm a woman, or just might be because I'm me, and that's what I do. But it also is because, in my mind, money isn't important to me. If I have enough to get along, it's fine. The only time money is important to me is if I really believe that everybody else is making more money than I am, and I'm doing just as good a job as they are. And then it's not that I want the money, but I want the respect that it signifies. So when I started teaching, I was at Dalhousie University, and I was really just glad to get a job, and they told me that my salary would be $5,000 a year, and I thought that was really great. That was a long time ago. $5,000 was worth a little more, but not this much more. And so I was working full time. And you know, I had, the average load was 4 classes, and I had 6 classes, and most of my colleagues didn't have their PhD, and I had my PhD, and we were expected to do publications, and I did the publications, and you know, at the end of the year, they gave me $5,050. And you know, I went to the coffee room, and I was listening to everybody, and I heard them talking, and they were making $13,000 and $14,000. All of my male colleagues, every one of them. And I said to them, really, how much are you making? Well, they told me, and they were getting a better increase than I was. It was actually 1% of what they got, but they had a bigger, you know, 1% of a bigger amount is a bigger amount. And I thought, well, this really isn't right. And it was really, nobody ever talked, at that point, I was still too young for them to have talked about women's liberation. It was just, I was just one of the 5 women that was working at the university approximately at that time. So I went to the dean, and I said, Mr. Dean, I think I should have more money. My colleagues have more money than I do, and I'm doing as much or more work than they are, and I'm doing as well as they are, and could I please have some more money? And and he said, no. And I said, why not? And he said to me, well, you know, if I give you more money, I would have to take it away from your male colleagues, and they all have wives and children, and you wouldn't want to take the money out of the mouths of those poor children who don't have enough to eat. So I thought to myself, I really wouldn't want to do that, would I? So I said, oh, and I left. I was very young, inexperienced, I didn't know what I was doing, and I didn't have any mentor or anybody I could talk to. So I went back, and I thought to myself, I'm not giving up. And you know, that's where you have to believe in yourself and not give up. So I thought, what am I going to do? All right, I will go out and I will get another job. And I will just show him that I can leave and I can have a better paid job. So I apply for another job and I get it. Now, I didn't really want to go to the other job because my husband was still teaching where I was, and I really didn't care to leave for another town. But I felt strongly enough about this that I was ready to do it. So I walked in, you know, 6 months later to the dean, and I said, hello, dean. And he said, hello. And I said, well, I wanted to talk to you about my salary. He said, we had that conversation already. Didn't pay any attention? I said, well, actually, I did. And he said to me, well, you should know that French professors are a dime a dozen. And you know how when you reach in your purse, you can never find the keys when you're going to open the car? I know, it was just one of my lucky days. I reached in and I found a dime. It was right there. I mean, it was waiting for me. I think somebody was up there looking at me. I pulled out my dime, and I said to him, well, sir, get yourself a dozen. Goodbye. And I left. And I thought to myself, whew, I just quit a job. Oh, thank goodness I had the backup. Because, you know, be strong inside yourself, but have a backup. Okay, so I thought to myself, okay, so I'm off to New Brunswick, that's it. I don't mind, I'll do this. Get back to the office, the phone is ringing. It's the dean. He said to me, I've been thinking over what you said. I said, oh yes? He said, I'm going to triple your salary. I said, well, I don't think that's going to do it. And he said, no. And I said, oh, I want exactly the same salary as the highest paid male in my department, because I'm at least as good as he is. And he said, okay, you can have that, but you can also be assistant dean because I need somebody like you to work with me. So I said, all right, I'll take the job. So I'm just telling you that so that you know, I think sometimes when you go into a job, the most important thing is to get the job. The most important thing is to be in the place where you can do your work, where you can be happy. But it's also important to be respected and to say what it is that you need calmly and seriously, but don't go away and drop it. Say it and mean it and carry on. And I think people take that seriously. And sometimes you're going to get an answer back, because sometimes people have come to me and said to me, you know, can you help? And sometimes I can't. Sometimes it's a system and I can't get through to the system. But sometimes I can do something. And so when I was at Victoria University, I noticed that we had cleaners, you know, men and women who cleaned the buildings. And there were an awful lot of women, and they were a lot older than the men. And I always said hello to them. And one of the ladies that I always said hello to didn't come to work one day. And so I asked another one where she was. And the other lady said to me, well, she had a heart attack and they took her to the hospital. And I said, oh, that's terrible. Well, 2 weeks later, she's back pushing the broom down the hall. I said to her, what are you doing here? And she said to me, well, I have to work. And I said, well, you need to take some time off if you just had a heart attack. You shouldn't be doing this heavy physical exercise. She said, I know, that's what my doctor said. I said, well, why aren't you home? And she said, because I can't afford to go home. I need to feed my family. I have my daughter living with me, her children. I'm responsible for the whole family. I've got to do this. So I went back to the office and I pulled out all of the pay slips and I looked at what had been going on. And what had been going on is that up until 1975 or 80 or something, 85, I guess, the university had paid all of the male employees 12 months a year, and all the women had been laid off all summer because they didn't need them in the summer, and the women actually hadn't protested. They had gone on unpaid leave in the summer. So all of the male staff had put in more years, and they had good retirements, and none of the women, because all of those years that they were part-time, none of them counted as towards their retirement. So they had been working the same number of years as the men, but they couldn't get a retirement, and they didn't get any benefits. That's why they couldn't retire. So I thought about it, and I thought, well, I have to fix this problem. This is not fair. How can I fix the problem? And I thought, well, all right, what I'm going to do is I will go find the money. So I went out and I found money for this. I got the money, and I got enough money to cover it so that we could go to the insurance company and put the money in for the women so that they could be paid the same as the men in retirement. In other words, what I do is buy their retirement. And so I thought to myself, you know, if I do this and I tell the union that I'm doing it, they're going to say, you got more money, you've got to give it to all the men. They're the most voting members. So if I say this, I'm not going to lose that money. And if I tell the faculty who will side with me, I'm going to embarrass all these women because they've got pride too. They don't want people to know that they're poor. So I actually cooked up this huge, long, complicated Baroque motion that I brought to the board about transferring pension funds and insurance, and this, you know, it was so complicated at the end. When I finished making the presentation, they just all voted yes. And that was, that was the day that we fixed the women's salaries. And so you can't always do it. You can't always help other women, but sometimes you can. And when you can, it's really a worthwhile thing to do. So I encourage you, as you know, be strong in yourselves, ask for what is right, but also try and do what's right for other women. And so now I'll take questions. That was the end of my little talk. What do you want to know that I don't know that I could possibly try and tell you anyway?
Just to make a comment, the 2004 Nobel Prize, our president of Wines Ottawa sent a letter in our name to her in Kenya,
Great.
Lisa Runte. So that was a wonderful thing that you mentioned, because I hadn't realized what it really would have meant.
Well, thank you for that. And what do you think about the idea? Should we bring in Nobel Prize winners and do something?
Yes, please.
Yeah, okay.
I was wondering if there was any planning already in the works for Dr.
No, actually, it's all your fault, because you invited me to come here and talk about inspiring women, and I sat down and started thinking about this, so this is a kind of a new idea. So it's your idea, not mine. We'll do it together, okay? So I haven't planned anything, no, but we can do this. Yeah.
There is a professor, she's,
I got it. I can't quite hear you.
okay. She's the president of the Princeton University.
Oh, yes, yes. Mm-hmm. Yes,
So Shirley Chocolate.
yes,
She's great.
absolutely, I agree.
Yeah, I hope we can.
You'd like to invite her as a speaker too?
Yes, that would be great.
Okay, well, I'll be glad to do that. We'll
Especially she is Canadian also.
She is, and that's wonderful, yeah. We'll have to invite her. She'd make a good speaker. And it might even, we might even do it sometime for like an honorary degree or something. That might be a nice thing. Inspire students at graduation time. Yeah. Any other questions or comments? Yeah.
I was just wondering if you could comment on being a high up female faculty. Like, do you generally find when you go into a university as an associate dean or moving up to being a president, did you find that you were always severely undernumbered as a woman? And do you see any improvement there?
Things have improved. When I first became president of a small university in Canada, there was only one other woman president at Mount St. Vincent. And now there are 7 women presidents. So the numbers have gone up. Across North America, there are now, if you count community colleges, 19% of the leaders are women. But if you count only large public institutions that are universities, it's 7%. So it's increased, and I think the number will continue to increase, and it will increase because you will study hard and you will go on and do your master's and your PhD and be there to take my place and to take the place of others. I hope. Please. I think also it's a little bit of knowing that you can do that. When I remember I was a little girl, about 10 years old, I was playing with one of my girlfriends, and we said, well, what do you want to do when you grow up? And she said to me, what do you want to do when you grow up? And I said, well, I want to do something wonderful. I want to be the president of something. And she laughed at me. And I went home and I told my mother, and my mother said to me, don't ever say that to anybody. And I said, why not? And she said, well, it's very presumptuous. And you might not make it and everybody will laugh at you. And so you should just sort of keep that as a quiet goal and keep going through, and maybe you can do it anyway. But just, so I think times have changed because now women dare say, yeah, I think I'd like to be the president. Somewhere in my career, I thought to myself, when I was a professor, I would go to a committee and they'd say, oh, you can be the secretary of the committee. At some point in my career, I said, no, I'm not the secretary of any committees anymore. I'm the president of any committee I'm on. That's it. So that was one decision that I made. But then I actually had the kind of reverse decision to make at another point in my life, and that was, all right, when do I stop having to act like a man and can do myself? And I usually tell a funny story about it, and it's actually very true. I was president of this small university, and I was very painfully young and trying to do everything right. And all the models were men, so I was doing what I thought men would do. And the head of the Alumni Association came in my office and he said to me, well, now that you're president, we're going to lose one of our very best traditions, and we're going to lose the alumni support, and we're going to lose donations, and it's not going to be any good anymore. I said, well, what is that? And he said, well, the president always came out and played hockey with the hockey team. Well, I said, I can play hockey, don't worry about it. Anything a man can do, I can do. So, okay, I had never been to a hockey game in my life. So, you know, you can really see how badly off I was. But I could figure skate, you know. I could do the, you know, I could do that really nicely. I learned that when I was a kid, I thought maybe I would be a great figure skater. It wasn't to be, but I could really skate a lot. So I thought, well, how hard could this be? I'll just go down tonight with the students at the hockey rink and they'll teach me what to do, and Saturday I'll be fine at the game. This is like Wednesday night. I go down Wednesday night with the students. Oh my goodness, it's the most terrible game that you ever saw. Have you ever been to a hockey game? Okay, they push each other down. They hit each other with the sticks. Oh, you know, this is really violent. Like not my kind of thing. And you know, I thought I'm going to lose my teeth. They'll hit me in the teeth with the puck. And they didn't have that protective stuff, you know. So I thought, oh, this is. You know, I went home and I thought, this is terrible. Not only can I, you know, not do this, but I have put myself in a terrible situation, because I should have said, I'm not going to play. But now I said I'm going to play, and if I don't play, you know, what if I call up and say I'm sick? That was a thought that crossed my mind. And like if I say that, they're all going to say, you see, she was a woman, she didn't want to do it, so she said she was sick, she couldn't come. That's one of the things when you're an administrator, you can never be sick. No matter if you're dying, you've got to go. So, okay, so I think I can't cop out, but if I go and I get out on the ice, I'm going to get knocked down, and that's not good. A person in a role of authority shouldn't be knocked down by other people. And I shouldn't appear to be powerless, but I'm going to look smaller than the rest of them, and I'm going to look weak, and I don't want to look small, I don't want to look weak, I don't want to be a loser. You know, that's not the way I should be projecting here. I should be projecting assurance and you know, winning things. So I thought, well, I've done it to myself. I really have done it to myself. I just plowed right in here, and you know, maybe I can't be successful at this job. Maybe I'm going to not. Maybe I'll just be a failure. So I stewed about it, and Saturday was the game. And when I got to the game, I skated out on the ice wearing a tuxedo, a black tuxedo, and the black tuxedo hat. Oh, there was a kind of a murmur that went through the crowd of 5,000 people. Like, what is she doing dressed like that? I mean, isn't she supposed to wear the hockey sweater? I mean, everybody else had the sweater. So I just went out on the ice, and you know, I guess they thought, well, you know, who knows what she's doing? Let her do what she wants. So the game started, and I skated right down to the opponent's goalie, and I had all my scarves tied together, and like one tied to the other, and I pulled them out of my sleeve, you know, and I tied up the goalie. And you know, they're kind of pushovers. They're so, you know, he didn't know what he was doing, so I just tied him all up. He didn't know what I was doing. Tied him up, and you know what happened? Immediately, I got a penalty for 15 minutes. That was so great. I got to sit out for 15 minutes, cool my heels. It was really great. Then the penalty was up. So I go back on the ice. And they're all coming at me with their sticks. I don't think they want vengeance. And I'm in trouble here. So I take off my hat, and you know, you always have to have something up your sleeve or under your hat. And I had borrowed my neighbor's pet rabbit. And I just gently put it down on the ice. And this little rabbit was going plunk, 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 plunk around on the ice. And all these big men were falling down all over the place. And they were trying to catch the rabbit, and they were piled up, and they were running all over. And the rabbit was just running, and the people were roaring with laughter. And I got a standing ovation. I didn't have to go out on the ice anymore at all. Okay, so this had a little story in it. And the story is, you don't have to be somebody who you aren't. You don't have to be a man. You don't have to play hockey. You have to think about what is the goal of the event. The goal of the event was to make people have a good time, make alumni and administration come together, raise money for the alumni. The goal is not to see the president get creamed on the ice, right? So you change the circumstance and make it so it's something that you can do. And I think that is really a good lesson for any assignment or anything. Figure it out, because you can succeed, but figure out how you want to succeed and do it your way. Just because somebody else didn't do it before doesn't mean it can't be done. So I decided at that point I didn't have to imitate everything that my male colleagues did. I could do something that was a little different. And I still do that today. And a couple months ago, a reporter came up to me and said to me, "Don't you think that giving cookies to students is too feminine and it belittles you?" And I said, "No, absolutely not. In my mind, a cookie is a gift to a student that says welcome. It's something that I can personally do for that student. I can't give them each an essay or a book or a poem, but I can. It's just a little symbol that I can give them that says, I care about you. I care that you came to Carleton, that you're a person, you're not a number. Carleton is a place with a warm heart. It's like your home. We are a community, and I greet you as a member of that community." So it had nothing really to do with being a woman, but it had to do with reaching out to people. Just so happens that I make better cookies than I make wrenches, and so I gave them cookies. But if I made wrenches, I'd give out wrenches. I'm not sure that would go over too well, but something else. Okay. So any other questions? Yeah. Thank you.
It probably means more than you know. And mentorship, something that's been really important in my life, being involved in Will and Women's Executive Network, some other organizations. Just a question, have you had some significant mentors as a young professional or growing up or studying that have been significant?
I actually did have a number of mentors, including my mom. And I was so fortunate to have good mentors. And because I was fortunate to have good mentors, I try and help other people, and I have mentorees every year that I work with, but I keep them all. We mostly stay in contact forever, and I actually learn every year from them, probably more than they learn from me. So.
I just wanted to say that I worked in residence for many years here at Carleton, and when I heard that you were giving out cookies the day that people were moving into residence, I just thought it was such a great thing, because that's such a hectic day, and it has so many levels for the parents and the students and staff working at residence, that to have you there just doing that very kind human thing was it just spoke volumes about you. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. So hopefully it will help other people know that Carleton is a warm place. And once they get here, you can be warm to the people too. And I've discovered, I told you one act of kindness begets another one. Well, I was a little bit depressed because I had to make 2,700 cookies. Oh no, that's a lot of cookies. And I was baking cookies, and I was really getting a little tired of baking cookies, and I've got it timed. There are 4 cookie sheets. I got 2 ovens. I can do 4 cookie sheets at a time. 7 minutes a cookie sheet, turn them around. I was really going it, but the students from neuroscience lab came and they brought me 100 cookies, and they said, "Here's 100 cookies you don't have to make." Somebody read the story in the paper, and the father of one of our vice presidents brought me 100 cookies, and then his wife was embarrassed, so she made 100 cookies. So there were 300 cookies that I didn't have to make. So everybody pitches in and helps, and I'm sure that this year more people will hand out cookies and smiles to people, and that's the way it should be. Okay. Yeah.
I'm interested, I think maybe a lot of you people here are interested. How does your typical day look like after you get into the residence?
How does what?
How is your typical
My typical day?
How do you manage your time?
Very badly. Actually, I should say the cookies, Ursula Franklin believes in cookies too. Ursula Franklin told me that when she was chair of her department, that she would walk past this little Chinese bakery that made these really lovely cookies, and whenever there was a bad department meeting or a conflictual thing going on, she said, I don't know why it was, but my feet would always take me right by that bakery. I'd buy a dozen cookies, I'd go into the meeting, and everything would turn into a civilized discussion. So it's not just me. A typical day, most of the time I'm started work by 7. I go out at 5 for a quick run, and then I'm at work by 7, either at home or in the office, but no later than 8. And I work usually till about 11 at night. I have pretty full days.
So you don't bring home any work?
I don't bring home anybody? Oh, I don't bring home work?
Back to home.
Oh yeah, I always do.
You work till 11 at night.
Yeah, I work till like 11 at night. So there's a briefcase somewhere here that's got stuff in it. Yeah. I always bring homework at night, and I am a person that works a lot. But each person has a different metabolism and a thing that's normal. And if I don't work the amount that I feel good about working, I feel like I'm being held back. You know how Gulliver's Travel was tied down by all those little strings? If you tell me, oh, stay home, relax, I feel like I've been tied down. Don't do that to me. Let me go out and work and I'm happy. Okay, so everybody's a little different? Okay, yeah.
So, I've got a question. I'm back on sabbatical. I got my first degree in '82, and I'm back now, and I still find the ratio of women and men in engineering are really low.
Mm-hmm.
It must have been 95% guys, 5% women back in '82. I'm still finding it's not that far off now. What advice would you have to women who find themselves outnumbered by men in classes?
Don't worry about it, just keep going. Never bothered me who else was in the class. Just go, do it. Yeah, it's their problem, not mine.
I would just like to comment about you say that you were majoring in math and you have Geiger and nobody would know.
Mm-hmm.
I started my first year here in aerospace, and I exactly feel the same thing. And I don't know if it has improved now. I started in 2004. I was a mature student, and I haven't been in high school for quite a while, and I have my difficulties. And then I feel like the professors think that you're in aerospace, that you know everything, so it's really hard to find support. I went to the Student Academic Success Center, and they have to push me back to engineering because it's a different program.
Mm-hmm.
So in the end, it's actually, there's like one that was in charge of it. It's not really that you're smart enough that you get into engineering, that you could really use some more help. Like, and in the end, I found a professor that actually helped me, and he said, you know what, kid, like, just keep going and you'll get better at it, but you won't get better if you don't get support. And so I decided, like, years after that, like, I had difficulties with my labs and everything. Like, you're the only woman in a materials class. And I have this really bad day because you're a mature student, and one of the TA was saying that, oh, what's wrong with you? Why can't you get it? And I said to myself that if only there could have been better support, that we could, like, there's student groups now, like I know lately there have been like student groups and they've given study rooms here in engineering but whatnot, but what if that was the reason? There could be other factors that affect your decision to pursue French, or for me to move to sciences, but what if that day I get a better support? What if that day McGill wasn't on leave and I could have talked to her and said, look, she made it. She became the head of, I think she's associate chair of aerospace at the time. What if she was there? So I hope at Carleton it has changed, that ever since. It's been 4 years ago.
Well,
And now I'm in sciences.
I think we're changing every day and every semester and every year. And you have to help make a difference. Because you have to go out and succeed and be there for the next group of women. And it does come around. The people start doing more things. Yeah.
Well, I would like to add on to that comment. Being a professor in engineering, and I'm in civil and environmental engineering, and I'm junior faculty. And one of the things which I was surprised, that there were female students from other departments coming to me, sometimes, crying, and they ask for advice. They have problems with their courses or with some of the professors. And the reason they come to me is because I'm a female professor, and there are not that many female professors in engineering. And I go to the engineering faculty board meeting, there's maybe like 2 or 3 people attending the meeting, female. But that's one of the reasons that I really wanted to start WISE at Carleton, and we definitely need more resources of it. So WISE is just a small component, but maybe we need something more structured for students in both science and engineering, for mentoring, for advice, even just to talk to someone for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, so they feel better, so they can feel that they can do it. And I think that's very important.
Okay, well, thank you for that. And I until we get it, please just help each other. Please, you can always email president@carleton.ca and let me know. I'll try and find somebody to help you. We all need to help each other, okay?
Sorry, I just would like to add something. In one of the meetings we had with the Faculty of Science, we decided that we wanted Carleton to be a place where female engineers and scientists are welcome. So we want Carleton to be the university where female can come. And I think most of us, we've had some similar problems. We've been depressed sometimes. We said, oh my God, what am I doing here? I myself say, what am I doing here if I'm from Mexico and there's a better weather there? But it's worth it. That I've met so many people, and I think it's a start if we do it by ourselves. I can tell being in CUS has been a great experience. We volunteer, we put a lot of time on it, but the benefit we've got is it's huge. And we had an article, we said if we can help someone who is trying to leave the program and stay because they have someone to talk to at that moment, that would be
Right.
really important.
So do help each other, but also in your heart, don't give up. When a door is closed, just keep knocking at it.
Well, there's been ups and downs, and I think if they had an advisor to the dean, which we used to have with Maura McDill when I came here, and they have this at Queens and at Guelph, and they've maintained their higher numbers. So I think it would be very interesting to have this position here. Because
What happened to it? Just in budget
well,
cuts or something?
In this case, it wasn't a big position, but it was in the other universities, and then and then Maura went away on sabbatical. Also, she had personal loss, and as you know, her husband. So, and then when my chair was here, I was doing lots of mentoring. We restarted the Carleton student chapter, but these things come and go. And then the chair finished in 2002. So at that point in time, I was now teaching full load and 15 grad students, and so we help where we can. But I think a position, I mean, I could help on communicating with you on how it's done elsewhere and what works and what doesn't.
That would be helpful. Yeah.
I want to say my name is Susan Mira. I'm the administrative officer of the faculty, and if you guys wanted to get some kind of resources to set up like a mentoring board that girls could put their names on, if they're available to mentor other kids, like through the CUIs, or the dean's office would support the initiative. There's no problem there, and then maybe if somebody's having problems, they could access this list or that way.
I should point out that actually mentoring is a big thing that we want to do with CUIs. So
Yeah.
for sure, starting next term. So
Yeah.
we're looking at having a place in the Faculty of Science and hopefully some equipment from the Faculty of Engineering. So we
The other thing with mentoring that can be, if they're not, everybody's busy and so on, the people that I mentor, we have this email agreement that they can just email me anytime they want whatever is on their minds. And I promise them that within 24 hours I'll answer them back. Sometimes it's pretty late at night when they get their answer, but they get something back even if we can't go to lunch or something. We just always have that contact. So it's nice that if you could do an email mentoring too is good. Yeah.
One question for you. How, as a woman, especially when you are in a minority group, as a woman, when you are in a place where there's usually mostly a lot of men, how do you change the environment so that you don't feel like you are an outsider and more like you belong? Because it's hard to figure out when you are, especially when you are at a young age and you're very new to the place and you want to try at the same time to be performing and being able to contribute, but at the same time you want to have some sort of feedback as well that actually enable you to say to yourself that you actually belong. For example, in a workplace, for example, when you're new and first of all you've got to prove that you actually can do the work, but after a while when you prove yourself that you've actually done an amazing job, even beyond the job, and you don't get the recognition, how do you make sure that there can be ways, but I'm just wondering the little spark that can actually start you and seeing the actual change. That's what I'm actually asking.
Okay, was it to get the workplace recognition or recognition among your peers?
Both, actually, so that
yeah.
at least you're able to feel like you actually belong, especially as a woman.
Right.
It can be pretty tricky.
Well, with your boss, it's always good to sit down and say, what are your expectations? Let's write down what you'd like me to do. And then at the end of the year, say, I did it. And you have a kind of a conversation about what his goals were with you and what you did back. And that kind of puts the boss in the position where they're going to have to say, yeah, you did exactly what I asked you to. And let's make some new goals for next year. For your colleagues, one can feel bad because all the guys are going out for a drink and you're not going to go out for a drink with them because you don't like that, because it's not what you like to do or whatever. Or you can feel bad about it. Or you can just say, I don't want to do that. I'm going to do what makes me feel good and makes me feel happy. And when you do, you become really more sure of yourself and you actually get power within yourself and people start wanting to do what it is that you do. And so, they'll say, oh, you're going to the gym to work out? We'll go with you. So I think if you feel positive about yourself and secure in yourself and happy, people will want to be with you and you won't feel bad about the other part. I know it's hard. And I have been many times in my growing up standing there watching lots of people and thinking to myself, how do I get it so that it's my turn? How do I get it so I get a chance? And my goal was, my solution was just keep working hard, just keep at it, be smart, be good. And later on I figured out that if you feel good about yourself, then the others are going to do too. And it's not foolproof and it's not easy. So I'm sorry, I wish I could just give you something, it would be the special key.
No, that actually was quite useful. I could see that.
But if you feel bad, find another woman and talk to her about it and say, oh, I just feel terrible. And sometimes that makes you feel better because just talking about it, she's pursuing me, I can tell.
It's okay. So on behalf of Wives, Will, and everyone here, I just want to thank you for coming here.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you. Oh, it's lovely. It's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. My goodness, what is this?
It's a surprise.
It's a surprise. Well,
and we can continue the discussion downstairs. We have refreshments. Okay. It's just downstairs on the second floor where you guys came in.
This is very nice. What does it say here?
It's a spa.
Oh, it's a spa
So you
thing.
can
Well,
enjoy yourself.
this is going to have to go back to you because I'm going to give this back to you.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, thank you.
Because you all, Anyway, I'm very grateful to all of you. I think you should probably have a raffle and use that raffle to, raffle this off and let everybody pay 50 cents or $1. And the winner, to pull it out,
Okay.
gets this. And then the money goes to your next event. Okay?
That sounds great. Thank
All right.
you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.